All right, it's 6 o'clock, calling the Norton School Committee Wednesday, March 26, 2025 to order. First up is the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The meeting is being recorded by Norton Media. If anyone else is recording, please just let us know. Then the first up is public comment period. Now, we have a big audience, but I don't think anyone's here to speak. So we'll pass on that one. Next is to vote to approve the minutes of March 8th, our budget workshop, and March 12th, our open session meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the March 8th budget workshop meeting minutes first. So
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then second vote for March 12th, everyone got a chance to review all these, hopefully good, okay. For the March 12 minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve. So
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next up is warrants.
I reviewed and approved the following warrants. Oh, sorry. That's only why you had 2 microphones. School expense warrant, March 12th, 2025, $515,998.97. School payroll warrant, March 6th, 2025, $1,126,177.86. I wish to enter that into the public record.
Thank you, Sherry, and to Justin Antonio for the student rep update.
All right, good evening, everybody. From the high school, there are a lot of cool things happening in the next few months. Spring sports are in full swing. The Olympic Gear Company presents Little Shop of Horrors on April 5th, 6th, and 7th. The art show is coming up on May 1st, and then prop tickets go on sale next week for prom on May 23rd. And then from the JCS, the students at the JCS are wearing their sea turtle gear this Friday and optionally donating $1 to raise money to help the cold, stunned sea turtles of Cape Cod Bay. We're also partnering with the JCS School Parent Organization, SBO, to host a school-wide ice cream party next Friday to recognize the work students did as part of our grade level coin wars last Friday. Students at the JCS wore their most colorful and fun socks to celebrate and show our support for World Down Syndrome Day. That's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you very much. Next up is Dr. O'Neill with our Student Spotlight Series.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming out tonight. Tonight, it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Eddie Abdow and his 7th grade scientists. I'm going to give a brief overview, and I'm going to ask Mr. Abdow and his students to come up and share some of their work with us. Recently, Mr. Abdow and his 7th grade science students showcased their experiments on static electricity and magnetism at the recent STEAM event. With enthusiasm and a hands-on approach, they brought the scientific concepts to life, engaging families and younger students to get involved in the demonstrations. Additionally, they demonstrated the use of hot plates and scales received through a life science grant, showing real-world applications of these resources. Mr. Abdow and his students are here tonight, and would like to invite them up to the podium to share a little statement and maybe some of what was fun about it. Come on up.
Where do you want us? Oh, right there.
Works for you, Mr. Abdow?
So Kerry Murphy does the STEAM showcase every year at the high school. And when I got the email, I said, boy, this would be fun if we did something like this. And through all my science classes, I just said, would anybody be interested? And these fine children, we'll do it. So I said, all right, we'll have a lunch and we'll talk about it. So we met at lunch. We had a great turnout. We all had great ideas. And everybody said, I want to do this, I want to do this. We let them pick. Dr. Ackerman and I had spoke, and we got this life science grant that we worked so hard to get last year. And we thought it would be great to bring that new equipment in just to show the difference between what we had last year And what we have this year, scales, hot plates, how much easier they are for our kids. This is my second year in Norton, even though I look a lot older. Things like this, STEAM nights, it was a blast. It really was. These kids impressed me so much. And the enthusiasm they bring, they love science. They love science. And you know, Mr. Goldstein walked in and they didn't get scared. So, you know, they're good kids. Does anybody want to say anything? Before you say anything, Ford Farrier.
Or why don't you just bring the microphone down a little bit, buddy? There you go.
Hi. It was enjoyable like doing the like railgun thing because like I like flying objects. They're fun. And you guys like chicken? Thank you.
Thank you, Ford. Anybody else?
Well, so we have Ford, we have Colt Ryan, Owen Chisholm, Ryan Daly, Ella Morris. Sorry, Timothy Daly. I have another one too. Ella Morris, Mia Abram, and Addie Turner.
Awesome, okay. Would you guys be okay if I asked Mrs. Hadfield to take a picture, and maybe Dr. Ackerman would be willing to hop in it too, since he was so instrumental in securing the science supply grant? All right. There you go. You might have to just. Thank you.
Great work. I know if you guys want to stay, you're more than welcome to, but if you guys don't want to get up and leave, we can give you like 30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, you too.
You too, Ford.
All right, next up on the agenda is school start time update, Dr. Romeo.
Okay. Thank you very much. So in December, we gave our first presentation to the committee on what the school start time committee came up with. And I wanted to bring this back to the forefront to share a couple updates with you and to talk about some upcoming community forums and opportunities for staff and families to ask questions about what this could potentially look like. So let me just start by reminding us of what our current times and transportation responsibilities are. Right now, we have the high school and our LG North School that begin right around 7:40, 7:45 each day. Then we have our joint bus run of the Yale and the middle school, and then JCS, which is not start until 9:15 and gets out at 3:35. One of the primary goals of the committee was to take a look at ways that we could get our elementary students more on a similar schedule. Ultimately, because we know there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration, looking at student data, combined professional development, which at the end of the day, we hope would really enhance our achievement for all students. So that was ultimately the goal. We also had a lot of data from families that showed that their youngest learners at 7:45 in the morning, they are up and they are raring to go, they're ready for school. And at the 9:15 start, it is really difficult. There's also a lot of research and data about high school students and teenagers and those almost teenagers and sleep. So we went into all of this with all of these things that we were considering and tried to figure out the best way to make this happen without, really going overboard financially. So after doing survey data and looking at research and looking at all sorts of options, we presented the committee with option 2. Option 2 would align the high school and middle school start times with a combined bus route. And it would get all of our elementary schools into an aligned start time. This would mean students in K-5 would ride on a combined bus route, so all of our elementary students would get picked up at the same time. Buses would come from across town to drop off at the yellow school, our 4th and 5th graders, and then they would divide and conquer to drop off those remaining students at JCS and LGN. There are definitely some benefits to option 2. As I mentioned, it brings that consistent start time for students in K-12, 6 to 12. There is definitely the possibility for collaboration between the high school and the middle school. There could be the option for students at the middle school to take some advanced classes if they were on a similar schedule, for sharing of staff. Right now, we have a number of middle school students that play up on high school sports teams. And because the afternoon dismissal times are, almost an hour off, they're missing a lot of instructional time at the middle school if they are released for games, which makes it really, really challenging. And there's also the potential of, looking at like student to student mentoring between middle schoolers and high schoolers. As I shared the elementary start times, this would actually bring all of our elementary schools to a consistent start time for the first time in at least 25 years. The current schedule that we are on has been in play for 21 years. Shared professional learning opportunities, the grade level data meetings. One of the biggest challenges we have is when our 3rd graders move up to the Yale. There are huge inconsistencies between special education referrals and interventions that students are receiving, because there is not that opportunity to really look at the 3rd grade as a whole. We look at it building by building. And then also, intervention planning. This also could have a potential benefit of being able to consolidate some of our specialized programs based on student need. For example, right now, if you are in a language-based classroom, you have to go to JCS. There is not a language-based classroom at LGN. So unfortunately, and same thing with our STEM program. So for families, that can be challenging because they can have one student who needs that specialized program and other students who are at their home school with very different schedules. And then also, option 2 allows our older students to still get out of school before their siblings, which some families do rely on for after school care. I shared with you what we kind of went into focusing on and thinking about. So there are, of course, challenges to this issue here. The later start time for LG North, it does not alleviate any of the concerns that we had about how available students are for learning later in the afternoon. One of the biggest challenges at JCS right now is families saying that their kids are coming home when it's dark out. And we know in those winter months that that is absolutely true. And we also have information from our teachers about by 2 o'clock, these kids are exhausted because they have been up early and, their optimal time for learning is kind of done. We have heard some concern from families about, combining students in grade 6 to 12 on the same bus, or kindergarten through grade 5. So we would need to look at steps for safety. And then there is a financial implication for this as well. If we were to reduce the buses down to 2 tiers, we would need to add a bus at the high school and middle school run. And also, we would definitely need to add one of the high school, the elementary run, and potentially one of the high school, middle school run as well. And for each bus, it's about $60,000. So you can see there that is the kind of financial impact. As I know, we are all aware that, we've had some budget difficulties in the last year. And I know that one of the concerns I've received from staff is to put that kind of money towards busing instead of towards staffing is a little bit of a tough thing for us to all kind of get behind. So that is another challenge of this option. So one of the things that we talked about the last time was if the committee decided that we do feel it's appropriate for us to change start times for the fall of 2026, how could we implement that in the most effective way? So one would be to have a strict bus registration date for students that are choosing to ride the bus to and from school. Under Mass General Law, we are responsible for busing students that live over 2 miles from their school in grades kindergarten through 6. We do not have a legal obligation to bus anyone underneath that 2 miles or to bus anyone over in grade 7 or above. So what we would do is we would ask all students to register. We would make sure that those students that we are required to transport would be placed first. And then it would kind of come on a first come, first served basis for any leftover seats. We would say that students that do not register by the deadline will not be guaranteed busing, only in cases where there is room available for them on their route. So that would be, if we did that we could do that across K-12, or we could do that across just grades 7 to 12. And then another option for implementation would be a 2-year rollout. And I changed this a little bit from the last time you guys saw this. So this new proposal would get 4 out of 5 schools on their new timeline in year 1. Previously, we had the high school and the middle school, just as you see here. And then we tried to get JCS and LGN together, but that would have meant a very late start for the Yale just to move back up to 8:35. And to move the Yale for 1 year, for those teachers and students, it just doesn't make sense. So this proposal looks instead at moving, so if this would have the high school and the middle school, those would be their new times moving forward. The Yale, that would be their new time moving forward, and the LGN, that would be their new time moving forward. And JCS would stay at their current time for that 1 year before rolling over to the next year if we needed to do a 2-year rollout because of the financial concerns. Any questions on that before I move on? Nick?
What, by doing this rollout, what is the savings looking like and why?
So ultimately, you would not need to do the cost of 2 buses in 1 year. So instead of putting $144,000 towards this all at once, you would add 1 bus in year 1 for the high school, middle school run. And then you would add the second bus in year 2 for the elementary run. And so it really is just splitting the cost because you would have the first bus built in your budget for the following year.
So would we have to add a bus due to increased ridership?
Based on our current ridership now, we would not be able to accommodate the number of students that ride with only 2 tiers of busing. So right now, when we think about our tiers, we have the high school and LGN on 1. You have LGN is a very small school, high school, a lot of juniors and seniors drive. Then you have the Yale and the middle school together, which is our very, very full run. Every single bus is pretty packed. And then you have JCS, which has more students than LGN and a little bit of a, higher ridership as well. So to get those 3 elementary schools together, or to get the middle school and high schoolers together where they're bigger kids, you would need to add a bus at each tier. Unless you go with the bus limiting and we keep the numbers that we have.
Well, another option is if we talk to our provider to see if they have the separate style bus that allows for more capacity. Because those flat nose buses allow for 83 passengers legally. So which would be, so instead of maybe adding a bus per se, if we get them to swap out a conventional versus a flat nose. And we identify the routes with higher ridership, then we may have more cost savings by, if they have those in their fleet.
That's a great idea. We can look into that. Ultimately, if I was to give you guys a recommendation for the rollout of the time change, this would be the last one I would ever recommend, because it potentially sets you, number one, you need to have the finances in place in two spots. And it sets us up for a situation of what happened 21 years ago when we told JCS, well, we didn't tell JCS, but when JCS was told this is going to happen for a year and they're still in the same place 20 years later. So that is my biggest hesitation. I am going to be doing a few upcoming events, but before I talk about those, I do, you know, the last time we met and talked about this, I had also said to the committee that this may be an issue that we say now is not the right time. And the reason for that is simply because of some of the new building that is occurring in town. As we know, we have a big subdivision going in on Pine Street where the students there will all be at LGN. We have Norton Links, where that is a JCS elementary school, and then several other projects that are kind of hanging in balance at the moment. So part of me is very hesitant to change times now, and then potentially we need to look at redistricting or another significant change a year or two after we've made this change. But I was tasked with bringing you guys information on school starts, and so this is what we're doing. But it is something that I think we need to consider. So I am visiting all of the school parent boards this month and presenting to them. This next Friday, my newsletter goes out again, and it will be, the whole focus will be around start time. And then I will also be doing a community forum on start time on April 28th. It's funny because I got a lot of emails from staff today, especially at the LGN, when I reshared out what I was going to be sharing with you all tonight. And you know, obviously that staff has a lot of concerns because there would be moving from an early time to a late time. So I think it's really important for us to really look at all the factors. If we were in a perfect world and, you know, money wasn't an option, we could get all of our elementary schools at 8 o'clock. And then you had, you know, middle school and high school coming in at 8:20, giving the kids a little bit more time for sleep, but also not making them super late in the afternoon. That would be ideal. One of the other things I personally would love, with my own background in teaching and learning, you guys know how long I served in that role. I would love to have all of our first grade classes in one building, all of our second grade classes in one building. And be able to, you know, have our students together in that type of collaboration amongst classroom teachers. So I just want us to make sure that we're considering all of those options as we move forward. So I will likely also do a staff forum at some point this month, just because of the amount of feedback that I received from staff today as well.
I mean, I think for me personally, like when we tasked me with this undertaking, for me, it was less about the start times per se, more about that redistricting. Because we had had a couple of meetings where we had looked at this potential growth that's going to happen in the next couple of years, and realizing at that point that LG would not be able to accommodate it. And so to me, you know, this would be the first step would be aligning the elementary schools, and then probably looking at redistricting as a second part of this project, because we would have no choice in a couple of years but to redistrict. But I think it's easier to look at redistricting when we have both elementary schools on the same schedule. You know, it might be a couple of streets here and there, but you know, for me, and I haven't had an elementary school student in a lot of years, but it's a big difference if you have to prepare your kids and your family for a 7:20 drop off versus a 9:20 drop off. Whereas, you know, as of 2026, potentially elementary drop off is 8:30. And not getting into picking your school, but. You know, that's kind of like, I think the two things we're talking about are mutually exclusive. Redistricting is like the second part of school start time.
And I think too, I agree for the most part. The only, I guess the only thing we would need to consider is what are the roles of 5 schools if you're going to redistrict, right? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, you have space constraints everywhere you go. But we will also hear at one time, JCS had 1,000 students there, and they did. They also didn't have all the specialized programs that we currently have now. So, and I'm just saying things, and this is not gospel or nothing has been decided. So I think it's important to preface my statement with that. I mean, if you decided to say LGN is our smallest school, that's where we're going to put little Lancers in all kindergarten students. That could have a different, like the start time there might fluctuate where you might have, and again, JCS is first, second, and third, and the LGN is still 4, 5, or, I don't know, or we have 2 1 to 4 schools and the 5th grade goes to the middle school. I think a lot of those things could potentially have an impact on the start time too. Like if LGN was just preschool and we weren't required to transport those students, then that takes a little bit of the pressure in terms of it getting to a 5th building. So I think there's just some unknown factors, but I do agree with what you're saying, Nick. Sorry, Dan, I know your name, I'm okay.
Anyone else? Yeah, I kind of agree with Dan. I feel like they're 2 separate things, but I also feel that what we're trying to do is do what's best for our students, and I don't want to get stuck in a thing where we're gonna wait because, oh, we might be adding housing, or, oh, we might have to redistrict, or, oh, we might have to do this while we're, going 1, 2, 3, whoever knows, like you said, no one's done this in the last 21 years and here we are. So I mean, that is just a little bit one of my concerns. I mean, I'm under the impression that I think from a Norton community standpoint, I hate that the Norton Middle School kids are leaving class early to go to a sports game. That to me is absolutely crazy. We barely do that. Very rarely do we ever do that at the high school, never mind, now we're bringing in middle school students who are, need to be there more so than maybe anybody else in all of our schools. I absolutely hate that, we're bringing kids up to the high school level because those times are off, this is where we're at. Again, we also don't have an unlimited checkbook, so I get both scenarios here. I definitely do not like the double rollout to save $63,000. We don't know who's gonna be riding. We have, as we all know, we kind of have a history of the middle school, where kids might ride in the morning, but they don't ride in the afternoon, or they ride for a quarter of the year, then their 2 sports start up and they don't ride the rest of the year. So I wonder if there's some other ways we could look at this to potentially save. But also I agree with you too, Jen, is, $144,000 is give or take 2 teachers, 5 paras, whatever that number may be, that, now you're dumping it back into transportation. But unfortunately, our job is to do what's best for, the majority of students. That's how we have to operate. So to me, I would kind of like to go ahead and take the recommendations and figure out where we want to go with them. I think there's kind of this timeline up here as far as, community forum, newsletters, hearing out from our staff and whatever. No one likes change. We know that LG teachers aren't going to like change. I get it. I would much rather be at work from 6 to 2 than 9 to 5. It is what it is, so again.
I don't want to do work. I think my biggest concern, Nick, and you just hit the nail on the head, is like, we're trying to do what's best for students. And I don't know if option 2 is getting us to what's best for students, or if we're doing the best we can with the constraints that we have. And so that's where I'm a little bit hesitant to like really put my back behind something. We need to change start times to get JCS and LGN on the same playing field. We have been having this conversation for a really long time. If other people have other ideas of ways that we can make this work, I please, like, email me, call me, like, I just don't know that this is the best. It was the best of the options we had, but I don't know if it's the best option. And I'm being just very honest and frank with all of you as I try to do with my staff and.
No, I mean, I agree, and I feel like JCS, we definitely need to move up that start time, for sure. I mean, that's it's a huge difference from LG.
And in this scenario, it's moving you guys about 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Which
Which even that.
25 minutes is
25
great,
minutes.
like, it's better than nothing, but it's not the ideal of what we wish we could do.
And, Jen, to kind of touch upon your point, if we ever went down the road of, again, hypothetically, saying LG turns into Little Lancers in kindergarten. Again, throwing this out, 1, 2, and 3 at JCS, keep 4 and 5 at Hay. What does that do? We'd be eliminating bus and saving potential money, I would assume.
But then you'd have to bus all those LG students to the JCS that maybe don't get busing now, because now they're more than 2 miles away from there.
It's like, what needs to be done first? Do we look at redistricting first and then figure no?
It's very much a chicken
Yeah.
egg
Yeah.
conversation,
And
and
I
just,
think that's why we're here.
yeah,
Yeah.
We've had this conversation so many times and we just couldn't decide which was to be done first.
agreed.
I mean, I guess the next piece then is. Maybe this is a very slippery slope to go down, but like, is the next piece then looking at. Combining schools to a certain degree and moving people around, and that is a whole different ballgame, and a big can of worms to open in terms of, Our first learners are coming in who've been used to doing kindergarten, whatever, for the last, who knows how long, 85 years of where they're going. And what side of town goes to what school, and now it would be, you're gonna actually be at the LG to start your Norton schools, then you're gonna move to JCS, and you're gonna go through all 4 schools, or 5.
That's how it
whatever,
used to be
you know.
though. So my kids went to preschool at LG and then went to JCS for elementary. So it used to be like that.
But but we didn't have preschool, I mean, going back further. North Public School started at today.
There was also a time where all kindergartners went to JCS.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of. Yeah, I'm gonna say probably 25 years ago-ish,
Yeah.
27.
I mean, and again, we don't want to get ahead of us a little bit here either, but like, to me, there's something to keeping little kids together. And there's definitely something to keeping first, second, third graders together. All of these kids are immersed in the community. You have this weird thing, we've known the struggles in 4th grade for how long about their, whether it be test scores, behavior stuff, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of that age where you're merging the 2 schools, and our 4th grade has always significantly struggled a little bit more academically. Again, could be multiple of reasons, but is that one, so I mean, I think, in a small town like this, it is a little kind of random to have 2 elementary schools, but however, in order to do it all correctly, we gotta make sure we have the space. Because if we don't have the space, and that changes the whole dynamic, and this conversation never can even happen.
I
Correct.
think you're answering your own question. I think we need to look at the whole redistricting thing or putting pre and kindergarten at LG. I think we need to look at that before we can even vote on anything like this.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes when you have community elementary schools or like neighborhood schools, those are typically K-5 schools, and kids come together in middle school. So we have a very non-traditional setup with the 2 elementary schools and then an intermediate school. This data is probably old because I remember at one time I looked up how many 4 or 5 schools there were in the state of Massachusetts, and there was like 11. So it's a very non-traditional setup. Personally, I don't know that this is like that moving the times just to move the times is the answer. I think we probably need to roll up our sleeves and be a little bit more comprehensive when it comes to where people need to go in order to make this work and make it work long term. And again, as you said, no one likes change. Every time a community goes through a redistricting conversation or a school start time conversation, that is when people come out It is very, very, people love their home schools, like, you know. You were either a JCS kid or an LGN kid, and everyone asks the question, JCS, LGN, right? And so that's hard to give that up. And so I think we need to be very thoughtful. I think we need to be very careful. I think we need to involve the community in more ways than this to figure out what that looks like. But it's going to be a very comprehensive process.
It sounds like a very big undertaking as well as you think about the classroom size, the space that we have in the classrooms and the programs and how that's all gonna work, like. Is that something that we have staff that can do that, or is that something where you have an outside consulting company come in and they look at like. Space efficiency and how that whole situation works?
That's a great question. And ultimately, I think what I would probably look into, because as Sherry said, we've had this conversation multiple times and we kind of keep circling, sorry, I want to say circling the drain, but like we can't make a decision on this because there are so many factors that I think are really challenging to predict. I think it might be beneficial to look and see who's out there in terms of a consulting group that is well versed in this type of work. And then also see what that would cost.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we are trying to be, you know, fiscally responsible so that we can keep staff in classrooms with kids.
Yeah.
But if we did, I'm happy to do that work. I'm happy to go out and to see what's available. I'm also happy to go out and to reach out to my colleagues across the state, people who have done this work recently. How do they do it? Did they use someone? Do they use it in-house? Would they be willing to share their process? Because if we are not able to hire someone and we can learn from others' successes and challenges, then that is just beneficial to us in the long run. So if that's what we want to do, we can, I'll let you guys decide kind of how you want to move forward.
I think to me, that sounds like a better idea.
Yeah.
Because I think, you know, over the years, we've had a number of committees where we're having people come into meetings, you know, every week, and it's just, and these poor people spend all these hours and their, you know, their precious time, and then it's like, oh, no change. Because it wasn't the ideal situation.
Yeah.
So I think exactly what you said, I would be comfortable saying tonight, I think that's exactly what we need to do.
I agree, Chip.
Yeah, right, 100%. I think we can start there. But again, I think the Charlotte point, like I sat on this school start time committee, or what we were calling it. You know, it's just, you have a lot of people involved, and you've got teachers and students and community members, and you know, and it's like, you know, I feel like this is not the first time we've done this, first time I maybe have done it, but you know, I think that's an ultimate thing that you don't want to waste people's time. So, and if again, I would like to get it right, and then maybe plug up that drain so we stop flushing it down.
Well, I mean, there's nothing that says we can't re-engage the committee and then look at, you know, do we look at redistricting on top of school start times, or, you know, relocation versus redistricting? And I say relocation meaning, do we have like an early childhood center at LG or whatever that looks like? So I mean, I think they're all, you know, they're all valid concerns. I mean, you know, but to the point of a consultant is like, if we're looking to save X amount of money and then we spend that on a consultant, then we didn't save any money. So that's, you know, that's the challenge.
But I think Jen reaching out to colleagues too is I think that's the first, that's what I was talking about, that's the first start.
I think that ultimately, you don't know what you don't know, right? So reaching out and seeing what other people did, seeing what other people, if there were people that they used. And then we bring that to a conversation and say, you know, we might be willing to spend 10 grand, but we might not be willing to spend 50. And that's a conversation for this group as well. So there's no vote on the calendar, on the agenda for tonight. But what I'm understanding from the committee is that we would like to explore a little bit further some of our options, and maybe put this on hold at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, you know, we appreciate everyone's work on it, but as you peel back another layer, we realized that if we're gonna change, we can change start times, cool. What is it? Is it what's best for everybody? Maybe it saves a little money, it might not, but then does redistricting, and that's the part about redistricting and, when we get into that layer of the conversation, is there any savings there, or are we doing it just to do it? And that's where we need to show, this is what's going to be best for our students for X, Y, and Z. Not just do it just because, hey, your schools are out of alignment, let's align them. There's no benefit there.
Thank you all, absolutely. I want to get this right too, as much as you guys want to get it right, because I think it would be a really big thing for us here in Norton, and I know I want my name attached to something that will be successful, and I know you guys do too. So why don't I start my recon process, and I'll bring you some information at the next meeting.
Yeah, I think that was my last point, is like, I just don't want it to be slipping through cracks, if you will. So if it's something that we can kind of get a timeline on, I think that would be ideal to kind of make sure we stay on, summer's gonna be here quickly, then it's fall, and it's, I don't want to be back in a situation in 2027, 2028, being like, oh, we've got,
Yeah, so I'll definitely collect as much data as I can, and I'll give a update for the meeting on April 16th. And then it, maybe there we'll have add a vote to the agenda. Maybe we're gonna table it at this time, or Nick, and you and I can be in touch between now and then, just to kind of figure out what that vote might look like. But I probably, if that's the case, I'm gonna hold on these parent forums as well. All right, so we'll discuss again on the 16th.
definitely, let's hope. Because we start doing that stuff, they're gonna be, well, the picket line out there. All right, next up is review and vote to the changes to the 25-26 school calendar. Dr. O'Neill.
All right. We mentioned that we'd be bringing back the calendar for you to take a look at our early release days for the fall. So as you know, we typically do early release days every month, except for November, December, and June. And those early release days are for staff professional development. You'll notice that we have moved the early release days for the upcoming school year from Fridays to Wednesdays. We hope that this is a positive change both for staff professional development and for families. And they are being consistent with the last week of the month, except for March, because that last Wednesday backs up to elementary conferences, and we knew that might be a challenge for families that week. Other than that, there are no changes to the calendar itself. Everything else is as previously voted. First day on September 2nd for grades 1 through 12. First day for kindergarten is 3rd, and then first day for Little Lances is the 4th. With no snow days, we will be out on Friday, June 12th.
Questions from the committee?
I'm curious, do all towns do this like once a month, half day situation?
Unless they have a large number of professional development days built into their contract. So I'll give you 2 examples of local communities. Foxborough, their teachers work 185 days. Students come to school for 180, and then they have 5 full personal days. Oh, yes, thank you. Not personal days, professional development days. Yeah, sorry. So they do not do any early release days at all. Those teachers come and they do those extra days. My own children attend school in Mansfield. Their teachers work 182 days, and they have 1 professional development day a month as well.
So,
Like the early.
The early release days, yes.
so I know there's 2 districts I can speak of just from my professional experience in my private career. There's a school district that I service that the high school has a day a month from September to April that is a half day. So they have 1 a month. There's a school district in another part of the state that has a half day every Wednesday. Every Wednesday of the school year. But that's, yeah, there's a story behind it, but I won't get into it, but so, half days are, like, one of my school districts that I serve has 6 half days between their 5 schools in the month of April. And 3 of them are in the same week, but it's just different schools. Half days are kind of a weird thing for some schools. But it's not always one a month or something like that. There's multiple scenarios.
Brian, this is a big question for you. So we have 10 district-wide early release days. If I've read this correctly, we have 1 additional day for Norton Middle School for, I believe, conferences. We have 2 additional days for called K through 6, or K through 5 rather. And then we have 4 probably around high school exams. How much, like with those 10 days, are all 5, or sorry, are all 10 of those days, half days, all PD?
No, there are days there that are for conferences, for parent-teacher conferences.
So how many,
The November date is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, that's a half day. The 23rd of December is a half day before the break. And then the last day of school is a half day. So there are 7 half days for professional development.
so on those half days, so we'll call it 1.5 days if you add those 3 down. The teachers are out early too?
Yes.
Okay, so we're giving them 1.5 additional days of paid time off, however you want to shake it out, because it's counting for a full day for them.
So the last day of school is a full day for staff, because they close out their classrooms. But the half day and when,
Okay.
yeah, the
Sure.
December and the November, yeah, so 1 day.
So they're getting 1 day for free. Okay. And then, so Brian, from your standpoint, the 7 other days, half days, are all PD.
They are.
So we have 3.5 full days of PD, plus the one at the beginning of the year. So 4.5 days of PD. Okay. And is that too much, too little, right on?
If you're asking me personally.
I am asking you.
I think in order to really maximize the time, the more full days you have, the better. As we kind of saw with the school start time, with the disparity in time between LG and JCS, in particular, we're looking at new curricula and the value of having educators together. We make it work because we have great staff, but logistically, it takes some planning.
And as someone who planned PD for 12 years, I'd say it's not enough. And I only say that because, as Brian said so eloquently, and he's so much better at that stuff than I am. It's really, really challenging to get, especially the elementary staff together. And there's just simply not enough time in the day. When you consider a brand new math program 2 years ago or last year, and a brand new math program this year, K-8 ELA program this year, that takes a considerable amount of time. And there are often, like, Brian plans coaching days on other days that are not PD days. So teachers might get coverage for an hour and they're involved in a coaching session during the school day. Or we have consultants come in and watch people teach and give them feedback. So there are other PD things that happen throughout the course of the year. Again, if we're on our dream things, I would love to have 185 days like Foxborough does and be able to kind of spread them out throughout the course of the year, but that's not what our contract is.
So then my next question would be if, like PD in May 27th, April 29th. The year is almost over. What are we doing for PD?
So there's a few things, particularly with the curriculum adoptions that we've had. you have to be intentional about having 3 to 4 planned longitudinal offerings for people. One of which is towards the end of the year, because you want to make sure that the educators lead through the year feeling really confident and kind of closing out. So without question, that's one of the huge values of having something towards the end. And then in May, we typically devote some time to transitions, because you have students moving from grade to grade and school to school, and trying to ensure that information travels smoothly is really important.
Are we obligated as a district, or like, does the state have some regulations on like how much we need to offer professional development, or how much the teachers need to? Like whatever they need for their professional, like how many hours do they need, I guess? Out of curiosity.
So there's not a set time. However, teachers are responsible for getting, professional development points in order to renew their license. And, we are obligated to provide professional development for anything that we're going to ask them to do. So if we're implementing a new program, we need to provide the training. If we're going to ask them to use a trauma-sensitive approach to working with students, we have to provide the training. This year, we rolled out a new IEP, which is required by the state of Massachusetts, that took up a considerable amount of professional development time with our staff. And that's something that's still ongoing. One of the challenges with our current, schedules, the way that we have things working, we don't have common planning time for teachers during the course of the day. We don't have time for teachers to look at student data and to have data meetings. So we use our PD time for all of those things.
Yeah.
There's just not enough time in the week or within our contractual time that we have our teachers to be able to do those other things. So as Brian said, it takes a lot of careful planning to kind of get everything into those half days as we have them now. I would hate to see us give up some of those without us adding a day to the calendar.
Right, I've said it.
And I know it's
before.
hard for families.
Right, I've said it before, and like I've had a lot of people in the community at like, this is it's tricky scheduling wise. And then from a Little Lancers perspective, those PM kids are still now they're paying the full tuition, they're paying like everybody else, but they're losing those days.
I don't know who's gonna kill me for saying this, but there was a year where we well, I don't know, it's gonna be Christine that's gonna kill me. We flipped back and forth. So like AM kids would miss 1 month, PM kids would miss another month. I don't know why we don't do it.
We did that so long ago, my kids were there.
Okay,
I was gonna say, my kids are there too, yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
I don't know why we stopped doing that. I was not involved in that conversation because I was in my previous role at the time. But it's something that we could look at.
I mean, I'd love to, I understand professional development, I think it's fantastic, I love everything about that. The half days are just real tricky. I'd really love to see full days. The half days for November and December, and that in June, absolutely, done. So you got me sold on those. Other ones are just real tricky.
I get it. So from a standpoint, and again, obviously, we're a teacher negotiation contract, right, so we gotta be a little careful here, but how do we, okay, so we have 3.5 PD days tied up in the 7 early release days. If we made that 3 full days, is that enough? Is 2 full days rather than separating them out being by half, trying to get half the LG teams down here for this meeting, like how much, if we hypothetically said, hey, we're gonna do a PD in the beginning of the year, throwing this out. Election day is gonna be teachers only, no students, and then we picked a random day, I don't know, tag on April break, whatever. Would those 3 days of PD be enough? 3 full PDs, not half days.
I would say from a teaching and learning perspective, yes.
So,
And unfortunately, you have the director of counseling and the director of special education shaking their head in the
I
audience,
think
so.
there's a couple of potential issues with that. One of it is the mandated trainings that have to happen on a certain cycle. The only way to do that then would be you'd have to pay people to stay after school. So that, because it's a cycle, not everybody's on the same cycle, so that's one piece. And then there are certain PD that teachers need to get the PD, you need to implement it, they need to come back and follow up, have the next piece of it. So we just did timing corners, for example, and that took a number of sessions over time. So it's not something we can do boom. And so when you get to the more, I hate to say it, the more complicated situations that we sometimes get involved in,
Yeah.
I think it becomes a problem. That there's not time to implement, coach, review, implement the next step, and do it again. So that would be my concern of just having 3 big chunks.
But-
If you're gonna do it the way that Foxborough does it, where you have some more time, then maybe that would work.
now, but from your standpoint, I think it's a common corners. From that standpoint, what does it look like? Okay, we do our first one, we gotta follow up, we do an end one or whatever. Do you need half days in order to do that? Or is that more of like, hey, we need to follow up for an hour, hey, we need to do an hour and a half? Hey, we need you to do this by this certain date.
Yeah, I think that it's one, and again, it goes back to it all comes full circle, right? So it all goes back to that district start time and aligning of space, because theoretically, we only have an hour and a half with staff in order to provide everyone the same information at the same time. So it's really, it's hard to say, because right now the model that we're doing, it's now 1 to 2:30, because that's the only time that it really overlaps for everyone. And then but if we had a larger period of time, maybe we'd be able to do it for some things, we'd be able to get more done in one time and then have one follow-up versus having the series of 5 that we have right now. So, I mean, it's kind of it's very much a chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
I
Scenario.
think the other issue you might run into is the amount of, when you're talking about bringing people in, right, non-Norton staff, now you've limited it to 3 blocks of time, and you might need an hour and a half for this, an hour and a half, but you might not be able to get people for those, just like, where you have a larger variety of time to offer people. So that's, for example.
And I think unfortunately, I would love to do the full days. It's going to have a financial impact when it comes to negotiations.
Right.
And this, obviously, they don't want to get paid for their time, I get it, I mean, I guess the last piece of this is, we got 180 days on the calendar, 10 of them are early releases. They still count as full days, correct?
We do, and we also need the minimum hours as required by the state. It's 990 hours for middle and high school, 900 hours for elementary.
Because ultimately, that is what is my biggest concern.
Yeah.
Our test scores are going down, we're having issues, across the board, testing score wise, behavioral, reading, whatever it may be. And yet here we are, once a month, letting these kids out of school early, away from what they're here to do, which is learn. So when you add those days up, to me, you're not doing a disservice necessarily to families and making it trickier for scheduling, getting someone out of work and so on and so forth. You're also taking kids out of the classroom.
But I mean, to counter that point, we just looked at new curriculum to adopt to hopefully enhance our test scores, and now we need the teachers to train on it. So it's that chicken or the egg conversation is no one's going to work for free in any scenario where if we say, this is your new curriculum, take a couple hours on a Friday night at your house and learn it, it's not gonna work. So we have to give the teachers the tools to succeed. So there has to be time granted to do that. And, I'm kind of out of the conversation because I have a child that I can just say, you have a half day, find your way home. So, and I get that, but, half days aren't anything new. They've been around since the beginning of schools. So, I mean, it's an inconvenience for sure. I remember it was an inconvenience when my kids did have elementary, early release days, but there's no other time. It's not like we don't pay overtime or anything like that. Teachers probably do, I guarantee, work on their own time and they don't get paid for it. We can't keep adding more work for our staff to do on their own. We have to support them, and this is the time we would have to use to do it, unfortunately.
And, you know, research shows the biggest indicator of student success is a high quality teacher. So making sure that we're giving teachers the appropriate PD is hopefully going to improve some of those other things.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to take away PD days, that is not, you know, I do definitely not want to do that. But if we're only getting an hour and a half of PD for every half day, that doesn't make much sense to me either.
Well, so, no, so we only have hour and a half of crossover time between JCS and LGN. So sometimes we're saying, okay, this is gonna happen in this 90-minute block. But before that, LGN is doing these other things and JCS is doing these other things. It's closer to 3 hours of every PD day.
It's just the collaboration times, yeah.
Yes.
Because of the different start schedules.
Yeah, again, I don't know, it's tricky, it's definitely tricky, there's no question about it. We have to have PD, you know, so. I totally understand that, I just would love to look at. We deal with this election, again, obviously this year's not gonna be an election year, but we deal with the election year, I feel like that would be a great place to start. That we tag in right there alone, there's one full PD day, the teachers already owe us 1.5 technically. So we wouldn't have to technically negotiate anything, I would assume, since. They're already getting 1.5 free days. There's technically still owes a half.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. O'Neill, but if it is an election year, even though our calendar is set, we can take back a half day and make that for professional development. Haven't we done that before? Didn't we do it 1 year before?
We can't add to the number of days they work, so.
So
We
we'd have to-
couldn't,
we'd have to-
we would have to just,
And
so for example, we just closed school on November 6th, and everyone who works 12 months comes to school, and everyone who is, you know, a 182-day employee stays home, and we add a day on at the end of the year. And you know, ultimately, hopefully we don't have to always close for election days, you know, the last couple have, you know, we'll only close for presidential. We don't close for every election day, but you know, I mean, as I said, ideally, it would be great to get another full day on the calendar, but you know, that's a process that we have to go through that's outside of our meeting. And, you know, we can look at other creative ideas. And if anything changes, we would come back and update the calendar, but
I just don't know. February and April, like, they were just home for a week, and then they come back for 2 days, and then it's an early release, like, that's, I don't know.
but the industry so much.
Yeah, yep.
And I do think it's important too, because I'm very lucky that my mother-in-law, I don't have to get out of work, I don't have to deal with any of this stuff. My mother-in-law takes my kids, so it's not coming from that place either, you know, I'm not really inconvenienced by half days. I can just see how many people could be.
Brian and I can certainly look at February and April to see if we can move those dates around a little bit. If you guys want us to do that. I mean, we could look at, you know, I hate to add a one in November because you have Veterans Day, you have Thanksgiving, it's like the shortest month ever.
Maybe in March, if there were.
We could do,
you know,
maybe 2 days in March. March is a long month.
Dan, you brought that up like
No,
2 weeks ago.
that's-
Yeah.
March is being so long.
March is the longest month for educators in my world transportation.
So we're looking at maybe we'll propose moving February 25th to March 4th. So we would have a March 4th early release and a March 18th early release. So that would be 2 there for that long month. And then, you know, unfortunately, your elementary students already have on the 26th, so.
I mean, what is, and again, I think, you know, the elephant in the room, if you will, the teacher negotiations, if we table this. Bring this up to the teachers, figure out kind of maybe where we're at,
You guys can do whatever you want.
that's not the case.
Well, in terms of tabling or voting, you can say, we want to, you know, we want to get further along in negotiations before we, you know, have this conversation.
I mean, I would look to. The moms, I think, this is me because like, what is, I don't plan out till September. I don't know, like, what does it look like from a family standpoint of like, hey, the sooner I get the calendar, the better. Is it something that can't wait?
I think it's definitely, I mean, my calendar's planned out for like 6 more months, so it's the sooner the better, but I think it needs to be right. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the general consensus when we've looked at school calendars in the past, and that's why we went a few years back. I believe we went to a 2-year cycle for that. Because people are planning, back when we had Good Friday, is Good Friday before the holiday, before the April break, I can get an extra day and go somewhere out, So I mean, for families, they wanna know as early as possible.
But if we table this till next meeting, is that even enough time?
Well, I mean, it really, it depends on what everyone's hangup is. I mean, we need to give them professional development, so we have to do it as a half day. Because it's not an election year and we can't give that as a full day PD. So if the hangup is just, and this is where I'm looking to you guys, like, I guess we basically want to know if we're voting yes or no. If not, why are we tabling it? Because, half days is when teachers become available to collaborate and learn new curriculum. And I understand that they may be an inconvenience, and I get that, and I'm sympathetic to that, but at the same time, all of us in our professional experiences, we're not going to, take on something new and not be able to train for it, because then we're asking our educators to do something that they're probably uncomfortable doing and they need help with. So I have no problem voting on it as it's presented, but I might be in the minority when I say that. So if those who have the concerns, then that would be what needs to be addressed. I mean, my only concern when we've ever talked about the school calendar is the longest month ever of March. I agree to not have them during those vacation months, if they can be put somewhere else, but for me, I don't have an issue with any of these, but again, I'm far removed from having to worry about childcare on a half day, but that's just my.
So if the committee was interested, we could move the February 25th to March 4th. If we're concerned about 3 half days in March, we could potentially move the 18th to April 1st. And then you can move April 29th to May 6th. Or we leave the 18th as is, and then we could move the April 1 to, again, March 6th, or you could do April 8th.
I like the idea of having one in March, in May. That makes sense.
So May 27th is already there, but if we wanted to move the 29th, we could move that to May 6th. And then, so February would not have any and April would not have any. But March and May would have 2, and I don't know how much of a nightmare that is for
Sorry,
anybody else.
I know it's not an election year, but can you clarify why couldn't we make November 4th?
It's not a national election, the local elections, we usually typically don't.
So we could make the November date a professional development day. However, if we only have 2 days for staff, we front load a lot of PD at the beginning of the year. So if we have new tech or a new curriculum or any of those things, it's really nice to have a day at the beginning of the year to work with staff and to start off the year kind of together, working together, learning together. As you know, that first day is our welcome back day. There are other things that are already built into that day. Personally, as the person who was planning professional development, I liked having that day to front load things.
No, I get that. But I'm not saying lose that day either. We'd have the 26th, have the 27th.
You would have to add a day contractually to use election day.
Then I'm going to table this and we'll talk about it in negotiation with NIFA. That's me.
But they AP testing, the nays.
Yeah.
And we have to think about that.
There's a lot, right? There's a lot that happens in there.
And I don't know what that, I try to see what AP testing would be. I think it might.
And really.
I would be able to. If we could get a day and take off, I feel like maybe, hey, maybe 7 seems like a lot. If we can drop that down to 5, but we add a day, full day of PD. Now we got 2 full days of PD plus 5 early release days, plus the conferences and everything else from a rental standpoint. Now you're only looking at 5 early releases plus conferences rather than 7.
So can I, just because we've talked about this for a while now, I just want to clarify, so are we worried about parents? That's why we're looking to limit,
Well, I think it's schedules, but I also think it's like that whole collaboration piece that we're constantly talking about, and like. There's only an hour and a half between the elementary schools to get that collaborative data and like all that, like, you know what I mean? I just think if there's a way for us to potentially add a day, a full day. And take away 2 half days, then I think that is potentially better use of everybody's time and schedule.
I lost track of.
And I don't think it's,
Come on.
and I don't think it's just parents when we're saying it that way either. Like, I think ultimately keeping kids in school is a good thing. Like, keeping kids there for an extra 4 hours where they belong, trying to learn in front of well-educated teachers who are doing it, that's what we want, so we're taking kids out to try to give PD, but it's like a double neck down, it seems odd, it seems like a lot of days. So and again, yes, there is the idea behind the families and everything else that makes it even trickier.
Well, if we're. I don't see a way, as this calendar is presented, to make 2 half days, full days, and have another extra day for PD, because we don't have that wild card day for elections, like for the national election that we're typically closed. So that's why I think this calendar as presented is for 2025-26 is the best we're gonna get, because every other day that we're not in session with school is a holiday or something like that. So we don't have that wild card election day to make that a full PD day and then take away 2 half days. So that's why I'm kind of, this calendar as presented is, not the best we can do, but it's the best with the options we have, because there is no extra day to make a full day for PD and not have the kids in school.
Well, we don't have a contract for teachers in fall 25 yet either.
Well, but we know whenever that contract is up, is negotiated fairly, that, unless we're looking to add a day on the teacher's contract, we have 182 days as historically as the contract. We're not a district that has 185 days or anything like that. So that's why, we're here with this. I mean, we could always say, maybe we take 1 out and you get 6 and we move 1 into May. And, so take away the February one, move April into March, and so you take 1 half day away and make it 6, if that's enough for the administration. Is that one of the suggestions for folks? I don't know. For me, I have no skin in this game. I'm just looking out for trying to hear everybody's opinions and concerns and trying to come up with a solution. That's kind of all I'm trying to do here.
Christine, this is, and you can just say no. What, do we have an idea on what the cost would be to add a day?
Contractually?
No idea. Like off the top of your head. No, not okay.
If you guys are divided and we can bring it back, it's up to you. I don't know that I'm gonna say anything to convince you either way, so it's really up to you. You could have gone a while ago. Thank you so much for coming.
Sorry. It's just so hard, because again, there's so many determining factors, and again, as you peel back the onion, this is what keep happening. So, I agree.
Well, as the chairman, you either call for a vote or.
I mean,
That's.
if I'm kind of reading it, seeming like we maybe table it. To try to
Then I would
get a
suggest
best,
table it.
to try to get a best plan here.
Or I may suggest tabling it with instructions to the administration.
Yep.
Because we'll be back here in a week or two if there is no instructions on how to relook at this.
So can I table and then go for the options?
Make a motion.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to table and have administration look for further options on a 24-25 calendar.
25.
25-26 calendar. Want me to read that again? I'll say that again. I'll entertain a motion to table with the instructions to admin to review the calendar and come up with a better scenario for the 25-26 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Nay.
All those opposed?
No.
So that passes 3-2. Okay. Oh, good. Sorry, I did some sense. Next, superintendent evaluation process overview.
All right, so as we did last year as well, we tried to go through the evaluation process prior to any change in the board with the upcoming local elections. So in your packet tonight, you have a couple different things. The first is the indicator rubric, which actually walks you through each of the areas that superintendents are evaluated on underneath the Massachusetts regulations. The first standard is instructional leadership. The next is management operations, family and community engagement, and then professional culture. So this is a resource for you. You really do not need to go through and complete the rubric. But it does give you a little bit of insight as to what each of those indicators means and how you're ranking me in each of those areas. There is a small version of the rubric which kind of breaks it down in a little bit more of a simple manner. Then you have a document which is like a a blank form. Pam also sent this to all of you electronically. And this is where you would actually complete your own individual evaluation of me. So it is customary for a school committee for each individual to complete this evaluation form and to rank me as you see fit. There is an area for the goals. Your packet also has a goals update, which I'm not going to read to you this evening because you guys are all well educated. So you would be ranking me on my, professional practice goal, the student learning goal, and the district improvement goals, and then each standard as well. Your chair is then responsible for combining all of your feedback to me into one complete document. Typically, it's kind of like the average of, all the rankings therefore, and then, selecting comments that you may have included to put into the evaluation itself. I am the only staff member within the district that has a public evaluation. So I will defer to Nick on when he's going to need your documents from you so that he can do his work. And then what we'll do at the April 16th meeting is we'll review the evaluation publicly and you guys will vote on my overall reading. And then that goes into, it gets reported to the Department of Education.
Perfect. Is there any timeline that we need to be completely done with this by state law or guidelines?
Well, if you want to vote on it on the 16th, it would be for then, but it has to be done by June 30th. I mean, it should be done by June 30th.
And I think obviously from doing this standpoint, we moved this date up, so the 5 of us were sat here all year, but obviously, so that's why it's a little earlier. Any questions, comments, concerns?
Do you want it electronically or do you want it in paper?
I will leave it up to you, because I don't, either way is easy, it doesn't matter to me. So you guys just give it to me whenever, as long as I have, if we're gonna vote on it on April 16th. I mean, as long as I can get it by like April 11th, does that work? That gives me the weekend and a few days to make sure I can compile them all, take the average and be good to go. So as long as I get by April 11th, that would be great. And then obviously we can do that on the 16th at our meeting.
Yes. It is.
I know 4 of us have done it Audrey, it's pretty easy, kind of once you walk through it and see everything, but. It's
Yeah,
not
my first meeting was when you guys reviewed it.
perfect. Awesome. Any other questions, concerns? Good? 9 is moving on to discussion or vote on school choice.
All right, I thought this is gonna be the one today, you guys surprised me. All right, so just to give you a little overview, we currently have 231 students enrolled as part of our school choice program. This is actually down from last year. I believe last year our number when I came to you with this recommendation was 247. So as you can see, our numbers are there based on our current enrollment. So you can see each grade level and school building and how many school choice students there are. After careful review of class size projections for the upcoming school year, I am going to be recommending the following increases for school choice. These projections allow for some flexibility in terms of allocating any new choice students across grade level sections without overwhelming the resources and materials that we have available. And it also attempts to bring some equity across schools where one has a higher grade level than the other. I also think it's important for us to realize that in Norton High School, we'll be graduating 17 students that are considered school choice up in the upcoming year. So this is a little bit different than I think we've done it in the last couple of years. What I did for you is I looked at class sizes for next year, and then I gave you the average class size for each grade level in building. So as you can see, both JCS and LGN, we are anticipated to have 18.6 as our average class size there in first grade. I think that's a great number, and I don't want to touch it. And so therefore, I am not recommending any numbers there. At JCS, our average will be 21.4, where our second grade at LGN will be 18. My recommendation would be 4 choice spots in grade 2 at LGN. This would allow 1 school choice student to go into each of the 4 classrooms that we are projecting for next year. And again, would only move their average class size up to 19, and it would still give us some flexibility if we have a move-ins of Norton residents. Third grade at JCS is going to be 21, same as LGN. And I said we could take 2 students there. Again, there are 5 sections at JCS. There will be 3 sections next year at LGN. So that again is not in every classroom. It would still make our sections about 21 to 22 students. At grade 4, I am not recommending any increase. At grade 5, I am not recommending any increase, as well as grade 6. Grade 7 is our smallest cohort currently. Our class sizes there are looking to be about 20 students, and that is spread across 8 sections. So we can take up to 10 students there, and again, it will not really change that number. We'll go to about 21, 22. Grade 8, there are 23 across 8 sections. I'm recommending no more than 5. Same with grades 9 and 10, no more than 5. You'll also notice that I could not give you an average class size for the high school. That's simply because it just fluctuates so much based on whatever Vinny does with the schedule every year. As well as, core classes versus electives. It's really hard to put a number on it, but those are the recommendations there. We also, as part of school choice regulations, we allow siblings to come in to keep families together. It's not just something that we do in Norton that's kind, it's actually part of the regulations. And then, our staff as usual. So happy to answer any questions here and take questions from you on these recommendations.
So I have 2 questions. One is the siblings and staff. These 2 exceptions. We're not projecting those to be part of the 33 spots at this time. Those are kind of above and beyond. So it could be a little higher with the condition of we're helping out our current families and our educators.
And 9 times out of 10, those are students coming into kindergarten. So I believe this year I think we had 9. And I believe the majority of the siblings, and then I think there was 3 staff members, and I think one was both a sibling and a staff member.
And my second question, more, I guess it's policy or procedure regarding it. When a school choice applicant kiddo comes in. Like, do they have the choice, like, for example, JCS and LG, how do we place them? Is it like?
So
is
the
it
second grader,
Like Taunton versus like Attleboro, because it's that side of town, or is it just?
so we would only have spots available at LGN for grade 2. So if we had an interested family that was coming in for grade 2, they would have to go to,
So what if
to
like the third
LGN.
grade?
so typically we do it based on where they're coming from. But once the spots are gone, they're gone.
Just a follow to that, like what happens if? Right there, Billy.
Everyone's leaving. Oh, jeez.
What happens in? Because obviously we don't know who these students are. Once they kind of get here, then we start realizing like, okay, this month, would we ever move a student who might be an LGN because we have different services at JCS for them?
We have,
Yeah.
actually, so we had a school choice family who was at the LG, children, and one of them actually needed a program support, so that one of the students moved over to.
Any other questions, concerns?
Just a random, I don't know if this even applies, but you know how when we have, students that are on IEPs and we give them, or we can bill Medicaid, right? If you have a school choice student who's an IEP student, do we bill their Medicaid?
So we submitted all of our students, we submit to Medicaid. I don't think these came more to the brand because we can't.
That's why Benny walked that on.
This is Casey's job.
So if we submit, Christine, Alex and I, we work together, we submit all of our students for Medicaid, not putting in school choice or anything like that, so we just put them all in. I don't know if the state then looks at it and then parses it out that way, but we submit it all because there are students.
Yeah. Okay. And then that comes back to the general fund to the town.
Correct.
We've had that issue,
What was your-
discussion many times over the years, Nick. And it goes back to the general.
I know that's not, these kids are. I get that, but these kids are in Norton residents. They're not, it's good, we're paying for them to go to school and then their reimbursements are going back to the town. Yet we're the ones who are on the hook for them.
So again, we probably need to do a little research about the Medicaid piece. I don't know if it goes to the town where they reside or if it comes to us. But let us do a little bit of research on that, but we do submit for the reimbursement regardless of their status.
And for the school choice increment data, that is where we get majority of that, those funds, not necessarily very little from Medicaid, but it's really, and that comes directly back to the schools.
And I remember last year's lively discussion on this. If a kiddo has, like OT, PT, we can bill that by hour back to their district, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So it all goes into that document that Christine was just talking about. So you go in and you say, this child receives this service. This is how many times, whether it's per week or per cycle. You allocate what the cycle is. Is it a 5-day cycle? Is it a 7-day cycle? And then you say it is a 1-to-1 service. It's a small group service. It is an inclusion service. All of that data goes into the spreadsheet.
Any other questions? I mean, I guess mine is, I think everyone knows how I kind of feel about school choice. Huge supporter of school choice. I hate that the state of Massachusetts hasn't changed the funding around it. It's $5,000, spend $5,000. how we're trying to put a bill through that got denied, so I don't see it changing anytime soon. And again, I always just go back that like, yeah, you might be filling the seat here, but by filling the seat, we're adding the case. We're adding an extra student, we're adding 2 students or 3 students, or whatever it may be, to our classroom teachers. You know, so I just always don't know if at the end of the day, you know, by putting a freeze on school choice, we'll call it. You know, and 17 kids walk out our door at $5,000 a whack, we're looking at like $85,000. Now, granted, you might get some faculty, staff, you might get, some siblings who come back and that number's a little bit less, but once that gets frozen for a year, 2, 3 years, yes, you are going to hypothetically lose revenue to a certain degree, if it's even revenue, and then you're back in the same, you're back in a spot where you're not losing $2 million revenue start, because the kids who are here will stay here. So I think last year by doing the 7 through 10, we kind of froze, the elementary school side of things, and like I said, it just, my thing from the state is that money is, it's quite frankly a joke, that we're only getting $5,000. I'd love to see where someone could be at for $5,000. Any other discussion?
I have a question for special ed, so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we have kiddos coming from outside of the district, we're getting more than $5,000.
Yeah, so that's what that school choice increment report is that Christine was just talking about. So
Or I can say it for you if you'd like. Okay, so
But
yeah,
that's not a school choice, so say it wasn't school choice, and say that we have services here that another town cannot provide. So that child needs to come to our
so
district,
we have a student that we tuition into the district.
which is a lot more than $5,000.
Yeah, so.
we have one agreement.
Hold on. Casey, you gotta get up, 'cause the camera can't pick you up, and I don't want it to go haywire on us here, sorry. If you want to repeat that question, that way we can get it.
Okay, so if we have a kiddo out of district who needs to come to our district for services that we can provide because their district cannot,
Yes,
our district gets more than $5,000.
so if it's a school choice student, then we would use the school choice increment report. We do have a student or two that we are technically the out of district placement for them, so this town pays tuition for them. We were like we would do for our out of district students, send out referral packets and things along those lines. So we do have, I think, one right now, Christine, correct? Yeah, we did have another district approach us last year to potentially tuition into one of our programs that we didn't have room for them at that time. So we were not able to do it. We're more than happy to. As long as we have room, we're happy to do that.
Do we have an idea of percentage wise, how many school choice kids come in and end up needing services?
How many school choice students require special education services? I don't have it off the top of my
Once they're
head.
in the district, so then,
So they weren't previously identified.
yes.
But even that technically doesn't matter, because we can't say no.
No, you can't
Like,
say
so
that,
that-
but
yeah.
just.
So how many students have we identified as needing special education services since they've enrolled in the district?
As.
I don't have that number now, but we can easily find that.
And ultimately, whether they're receiving the special education services. We get extra money within that sped increment report.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
We can easily track that down.
I'm fairly certain though that the percentage of school choice students that are on IEPs is very close to our percentage of students that are Norton students that are on IEPs.
It's actually lower.
It's lower?
It's lower.
Okay, I was gonna say, I feel like it's fairly close, but if you can tell me it's lower, that's interesting.
Okay.
And how many students do we school choice out of Norton compared to in? So we have 200 and what was the number, 31, 231 who come into Norton. How many go out? Do we know that?
I think. Jen-
We do. We got this information not long ago because we were looking at our sending tuition money. And I thought, oh, we sent that many kids. And it was a bigger number than I thought. But I don't have it Christine maybe look at it for us if there's other questions while she's looking.
And then
And I could definitely get that to you guys for tomorrow.
this is the biggest one I've never wrapped my head around. Why does Norton have 231 and the closest district to us, whether dark district, location district, anything else, is 75 from Rockland? Why do we have
We've
such,
been selling school choice really hard for the last 10 years.
which is great, but other schools have also done the same, so why are we so much higher than everybody?
It's the quality of education they're getting here. That's what I've always said when it comes to school choice. You're getting a better education than some of our surrounding towns. That's just a fact. And I've said this publicly many years. I would put our district up against just about every town in the area. That it's going to be a better district fundamentally than some of the towns around us that maybe don't have some of the resources we have. You know, some people living in the cities want that small town feel for their kids. And you've seen it. I remember when I was in youth sports, those kids wanted to come and play sports here too, because they didn't like that city mentality. Unfortunately, the other aspect of that is Norton is kind of a pretty expensive community. So if you can get a quality education and get your kid to that school, that's how I've always felt about school choices. They're looking for more opportunities for their kiddos. And I think they get that here.
And it could be too, just with the locations of those other communities that have not had as much success. You know, when we think about it, Norton is, you know, it touches Attleboro and it touches Taunton, which are both considered cities, more urban communities, more urban school communities. Both great communities, but there is, I think as Dan said, looking for more of a small town feel. We currently we choice out 29 students.
So we send out, quick math, 150,000.
30 times 5. Oh, the virtual school.
Oh,
But
that's
okay, so that includes the kids that go to the virtual school. They get more money.
Don't even start with that.
Nick didn't hear that part.
Yeah, but that, because those kids go to virtual school, they get like $10,000. Yeah, which is, it's completely backwards, so. it's so-
And this is why I assume this one was gonna be the longest.
It's so. Virtual school gets $10,000, to have your kid actually go to school gets $5,000. Who comes up?
I actually have a meeting scheduled with Representative Howitt next week to talk about chapter 70, if you want to join me.
I don't know if you want me there. All right.
Nice collaborative approach.
Approaches. Any other concerns, questions here?
No.
Do anyone want to make a motion? Do you want me to entertain a motion? All right, well, I'm gonna do my motion. I'm going to entertain a motion to freeze school choice for the 25-26 year and bring it in.
Do that.
Why not?
Because if you are going to not continue with school choice, then you need to have a public hearing.
So are you do not want to this motion presented, you do not want to add these spots, you want to go with, you don't want to add any spots, is that correct?
I would like to keep the siblings enrolled, obviously, and then any staff members who could bring their kids here. I don't want to have any more school choice. We'll call general students coming into district. So what do we need to have a public hearing about, and why is this the first time we're hearing of that?
Oh, so ultimately, if we decide to freeze school choice, I did not know that was anywhere on your mind, so a public hearing is required if we're going to change our status from accepting school choice to not accepting school choice. That needs to occur. If we do not accept school choice, we are not able to accept our staff students as school choice either. If school choice does not exist, we cannot give staff that perk unless it exists somewhere else. And it does not exist anywhere else at this time. We can make it exist somewhere else. But that we would not get any money for them from the state because we are not a school choice district. There are communities that have it in their contract, and it's called, like, whether it's a perk of the contract or if it is like a tuition waiver, those exist. But unfortunately, that is something that we could not do. And I apologize for not giving you the heads up on the public comment. I didn't know this was an option.
Can we say we're a school choice community, allow one general student and still allow, like, is there a way around that? You know what I'm saying?
I mean,
Like,
that, your numbers are the way around that. So, you know, the numbers that I presented to you tonight, I thought were pretty reasonable in terms of, these are the class sizes and this is the recommendation. If you guys, say we want to adjust this or we want to do something like that, we can. I don't know that you could say we have one spot and be considered.
yeah, no, that's.
I don't know if you could say we have one spot and be considered a district, a school choice district, or. I don't know, so you could say,
I would like to make the motion to approve. Motion to approve the school choice numbers as presented. That would be my motion.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Second.
Well,
You need a second? Oh, second.
Because I'm.
Oh, right,
all right, why don't we do this, start over,
yeah.
do the motion again.
I would like to make a motion to approve school choice numbers as presented tonight by Dr. O'Neill.
So moved.
Second. Now, all those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Two. So that motion's denied. So now, okay.
so now we have to,
Well, is there a verbal opposition? Because
right, it's just,
for the record, we would have to have.
Okay, so all those, oh, sorry, that's my fault. So all those opposed, please vote aye. So keep it there. Okay, then, so I think with knowing kind of what happened and having a public hearing and everything else, I don't know if there's something that we can actually vote on until we have more information, then we're gonna have to settle the public, if that's the spot we're going to go. I don't really know.
So-
We're gonna go.
what other information is the committee looking for?
I said it last year and I will say it again, until I have 231 students and who they are and what they do and what services they're getting and how much money they're bringing into us and how much money school choice is costing us, because they are not free and it's not a full $2 million that we get in reimbursements. So until I have that number, I'm going to vote against school choice until the state of Massachusetts changes from $5,000 to X amount of dollars, whatever that may be. That's my personal opinion. I don't know how the other two dissenting votes feel.
I understand your frustration, Nick, with the state. I totally get that and I feel that with you. But and listen, my kids are all done. I really worry for your children. I really do. Just how we have run the schools and how school choice has helped us. I hope you guys get the information you look for and make decisions, because I truly am terrified for your children.
I just think this is too many with like, I don't know, the
So,
behavior, the.
so I guess, again, we'll come back to. Maybe we need to have a further discussion on this before we're voting down school choice completely, because as of right now. To me, we're not allowing school choice at all.
Well, I mean, I think that, I thought that was on the numbers, these new ones. I mean, obviously to continue to allow families to come in of siblings, yes, and to continue to allow,
We're required to.
yes,
So,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So like that's still, that's not, you're not leaving per se, like that I think would continue, and like obviously having an option for teachers to, or staff members to bring their kids here. I just think 10 more 7th graders, 5 more 8th graders, like that's a lot in the middle school, that age range, that's a lot. I think the elementary, where our scores continue to not be great, and to bring in students that have potentially more needs that take away from our own students that are here. I just don't want to see, I don't know. And last year, if we did a modified version and it was 7th through 10th grade, I'd be open to like considering, I guess, a 9th and 10th grade number. But I just think the middle school and elementary schools, I wouldn't want to touch.
I agree, and I'd like to see these numbers come down overall, leave more room for our kiddos who are moving into district and who are paying their taxes to come to our school.
Yeah, I mean, I think not to tie this all together, but tie the whole meeting together here. You know, we're talking about redistricting and potentially adding, and, you know, if we ever did go down the route of, you know, making LG, early childhood center, if you will, then like, you know, adding more kids to the classrooms is going to take up more and more space, you know, and again, I know most of these numbers are small enough that you're gonna see a growth in town, whatever it may be, but I mean, Dan just made a good point. You know, I don't know how the committee feels in terms of like, is it a numbers thing in terms of, you know, the additional of what, you know, Dr. O'Neill's proposing? Is it something that people would entertain doing minimum, you know, or coming up with whatever number, if you didn't like the number of 10 and 7th grade and doing something that you feel better with at 4 and have that conversation offline? Because then I think maybe we do revisit it. But again, I think my feelings have been pretty clear, so I guess we kind of just looking for some guidance here.
Would we be interested in keeping it status quo for the next year, looking at just grades 7 to 10, 5 spots each? And then siblings?
I think it's important, Jen, for the 5 of us to listen to your recommendations when it comes to things like this. You guys are the ones that live this day in and day out, not us, right? Like, none of us are, you know, you're in high school still.
For a year.
Right, so none of us, well, except for Dan for a year, you know, we don't know, I knew last year, right, because my son was there, so these are the things that I defer to you and your staff to tell us what we can handle.
I think, and I certainly understand the committee in wanting to, you know, be more cautious about numbers. From last year to this year, our projections are already down about $70,000 of choice funds from just the students that we have here, because our number has gone down. You know, I thought the 2nd grade one where you're looking at 18 versus 21, that's definitely a difference between one side of town to the other. And, you know, making those numbers a little bit more equal, that would be 1 student per class. If we wanted to get rid of the 3rd grade numbers, because we're like, okay, 21, that's better. If we wanted to move 7th grade down to 5, and that might be more manageable for people. I worry about $2 million of our budget this year is coming from school choice. And so we need to sustain in some way, shape, or form some of that money, because otherwise we're going to have, you know, it's not going to happen overnight, as Nick said, it's not going to happen all at once. But it will happen. And it's unfortunate because we all made the decisions that we made at the time when we made them with the best information that we had, and to keep teachers in front of kids. And it's scary to think about not having some of those things. So if you guys are interested in looking at different numbers, I'm more than happy to put that together for you. You can, I mean, you guys could vote tonight based on adjusted numbers. It's really up to you.
So can I just ask another question? And this is gonna be one of these things where, you know, we may all agree to disagree, and I still care and like every single one of you. So I just want to preface that, because sometimes these things get a little bit heated, and that's not how this is going. But do you guys have a plan for the budget of how we're gonna have this money if we don't have school choice? Have you guys, like, is there something you guys know that maybe we don't?
I just don't think that, again, we spent $20,000 per pupil. My kid, and again, I get it, I've had this conversation with Dinesh 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Our per pupil cost is $20,000 to get a kid in. You know, if you take our budget, you know, and do it out by how many kids we have in school, it's basically $117 a day for each kid to walk into that building. That is our budget in town. With $5,000, it's not enough. And I don't think, I get it. We're looking at this as, you know, just again, do quick math. You know, from 231 is $1.1 million, not 2, right? Now, I get it with the reimbursements and everything else or whatever's coming in, you know, from as far as an actual figure. But for that much money, how much taxing are we doing on our classroom teachers? How much taxing are we doing on special educators? How much taxing are we doing on pupils and classrooms and you know, different classes in the high school and everything else? So I don't know if 1.1, but again, we're not losing $1.1 million. This first year, we're losing 85. You know, and that's 17 kids walking out, none coming in, if we did it that way, you know? So yes, it will be a 12-year, and again, that's a free freezer for 12 years, but it'll be a 12-year decrease of $1.1 million is kind of how I'm looking at it. But
by that math, if you're losing, which is 85 next year, then that's, you know, progressive. You know, when Dr. O'Neill is stating 2 million, that's because we've been pretty responsible with our school choice and using it for the first probably 7 or 8 years. It was one-time expenses, and then the budget gets tighter and tighter. So what my concern is, if we start limiting this program, is you may see $85,000, you know, next year, but you have to compound that year over year, because if you're a staunch of, you know, the state's not paying enough, so you don't maybe support it because it's, and I'm not saying you don't support the program, I'm saying you don't support the reimbursement number. You have to think 2 or 3 or 4 years ahead, where if no new, you know, kids are coming in, you take, you know, 17 less this year, you're not taking in the 33 recommended, and then the juniors and the sophomores and, you know, the freshmen, you know, you're compounding the issue by limiting, you know, the enrollment. So, you know, I mean, for me personally, I've been a proponent of this since it started. I think it started my first year. And again, we've been responsible, but, you know, to your point, we spend $20,000 per student, but the non-school choice students, we don't get a check from the state for those students for $5,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, we get that money. This is in addition to those kids in that classroom, because we've had this discussion before. We're not closing a classroom because, based on these numbers, you know, we're not being able to have a savings of, you know, X amount. And, you know, one of the things with the 7th grade number, yes, it looks a little high, but that's where staffing was cut last year, because that's the lowest grade we have, you know, enrollment wise, because those 6th graders this year are now 7th graders. So there is a little bit of availability because of a low number. Me personally, and I'm not going to speak for Sherry, but I think she thinks relatively the same way. I don't have a problem with this the way it was proposed. I don't believe Sherry does. If there's members that have a problem with just the numbers, I would say, you know, have a discussion with Dr. O'Neill and say, my concern is this, and then maybe we revisit this. But I don't think in any way we should, you know, try and limit this program. You know, in your scenario, limit the program because of reimbursements. It's this whole separate topic. But you know, I just look at it as, from the back of the napkin, we're losing 17 students and we're not gaining 33 students. So we're losing money both ends. So it's almost like you're losing, you know, what is that, 50? So you're losing 50 students total, because you're not allowing 33 and then you're losing 17 to graduation. Does that make sense?
not really, but I get what you're saying.
So your $85,000 is now, you know, a little bit more, because you're not having kids come in to supplement the 17.
Yeah, all I need is 17 to come back in to get to the 85 again.
But you're not allowing minutes. That's the thing. You're not allowing 33 spots.
Yes.
So you're now losing 17 spots and now not allowing 33. And so you're down 50 spots total for next year.
No, I'm only down 17 still. This number is, this number could be 90. It doesn't matter really what that number is. You know, if we lose 17 and replace 17, we're not losing anything. We're breaking even.
At this point, we're not allowing 17, and because we just voted to not allow 33 spots.
Correct.
So therefore, you're losing 50 spots total.
Because we never had that money, so we never really had. You know what I'm saying? Like, we never, that money wasn't in our budget. We're also assuming we're gonna get, and again, I think we would get 33 kids, but we're also assuming we're gonna get, you know, 10 7th graders. We may not, we don't know. you know.
And that's why we've always kind of left. No, but you're losing because you're not replacing the 17 that are gone and you're not approving 33 spots to come in. I mean, I've said my piece on it, if it's members that have an issue with the numbers, have that discussion. I would like to see this come back up. I would, because, you know, if we're not going to allow 33 spots, then to Dr. O'Neill's argument, then we may not be a school choice district if we're not allowing spots.
So can I just ask another question, because I really am trying to understand where you guys are coming from. I'm trying to keep an open mind and hear like everybody out. So I've heard a couple of times tonight that test scores are down. Are we thinking that test scores are down because of the school choice kids that we're having in here? Are we thinking that our class sizes are too big because we're increasing? But if class sizes are too big, it could be because we have school choice kids coming in. But that's part of your concern.
We're giving extra spots, right, to our school choice kids. And we are around the highest school choice district. In the state, for like 250 kids, right?
231, I think it said.
Yeah.
So,
It's huge.
but if we don't have school choice kids coming in, your thought is that it's not like we have any more students in Norton that would be coming in, correct? Because enrollment is what it is. So I guess what I'm asking that is because if it's a concern that school choice kids are taking up seats and test scores are going down, is that something, Jen, that you can speak to, you know, as educators to that? And maybe the answer is no, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to,
No, I'm sure. I think
I'm
it's a
trying
fair
to
question.
understand.
And I think, look, I'm saying right now, I do not think because school choice kids are coming in, our test scores are coming down. I know many of these families, you know, there's a lot of kids who are my kids' ages who are school choice in, who are great people, great families, and quite frankly, great friends, you know. I think the issue is you're not, I just don't think the $1.1 million for two, and again, that's 231 times 5, is actually a revenue source. I want to know how much are we paying out in whether it be teachers, special ed services, X, Y, Z, you know, of how much that's actually costing us. Now, again, back to Dinesh and Dan's point, well, we're not going to cut a teacher, we're not going to cut this, we're not going to cut that. Well, that's because we've done that for 12 years now. If you put a freeze on it, in our kindergarten class, which right now is our smallest one, I believe, in out of all 13 grades, if you will, and all of a sudden Norton's enrollment starts plummeting down a little bit. Now there might be the ability to say, hey, let's get 1, 2, and 3 grades together. Let's make sure we, you know, our class sizes can stay under 20, you know. So, and again, I don't, you know, from a teacher standpoint, I think classroom management and having 29 kids in a class to 20 kids in a class really depends on the teacher, you know, more than anything. Studies suggest that as well. The teachers kind of say differently. They want fewer kids in their class, you know. So I feel like by adding more caseloads, you know, we keep hearing about caseloads from our special educators, that they're overworked, underpaid, they're giving way too many kids, they forget service call. We're pulling, you know, Mrs. Farley out of the JCS to go cover another class. Like we're putting more and more on it by saying, well, sorry, but we're pulling in money. That's my thing. And again, I've never seen that money and that breakdown actually happen. So that is my biggest thing.
So is there a happy medium then for kind of our division in the board right now? For Jen, you to pull this information together so that we have, you know, facts before.
So last year when we shared with you guys, we took some sample students, and shared all that information with you, and then we showed you, I think we had 6 or 7 students, and I think 1 was a negative, and the other 5 or 6 were all positives. We can do that, and I'll be honest, it's gonna take a lot of time for us to do that, and if we had been asked for that information, we would have tried to pull it together, and if I knew that this is what, like, we were gonna have nothing versus, you know, something, look, we can try to get that info together to you. I think, you know, Dan's point about things compounding. So if we freeze school choice right now, next year you lose 85,000. The year after that, you lose 180 because you lose the 85 that you lost the year before because you didn't backfill any kids, plus you lose the 95 you were supposed to lose the year before. The year after that, you lose 295. The year after that, you lose 405,000. In that 4 years, you lose close to $1 million because you would have gotten that money for 4 years in a row. And so I know it can't just be about the money, but when you're laid off 29 people last year, it has to be a little bit about the money. So if the committee would like us to, we can table this until the 16th. I will be honest that I don't know that we can pull all that data by the 16th. We might need the first May meeting. And I need Pam's gonna have to help me look at the policy, because I know we updated the policy to have sooner dates this year than what we had in the past. So we might need to take this vote on by the 30th. So I will look at that and confirm that. And so it's up to you. If we want to, if you guys are comfortable saying, let's do 5, 5, and 5 from grade 7 to 10 like we did last year, but that's not the vibe I'm getting, so.
I kind of agree. So I don't know. I mean, I guess, we definitely gonna need more information one way or another, so we don't think a vote right now is really necessary. I think it would be smart to kind of have everybody think about it, kind of get back if you have numbers, and then again, from admin standpoint, I don't know how fast you're gonna be able to pull things together, but
Well, I guess, and much like Sherry, not a disrespect, but it, to the other members that voted in the negative, is it, I guess Nick's made it pretty clear what his issues are. Is yours just a numbers issue and he wanted it to, like, for example, if you want that 10 to be a 5, is it like, I just want to get to the root of the issue, because if it's the numbers that Nick is, and that's an undertaking, or is it, the reimbursement type of scenario versus just if you guys have a problem with the numbers, like that's where I'm kind of like, if you just want it to be 10 to 5, then that's, is that the, and I'm not gonna have you publicly, you don't have to publicly tell me, but I would say for you guys to maybe chat with Dr. O'Neill offline, one-on-one, and say my issues are X, Y, and Z versus, because, and I'm not gonna speak for you, but if you don't want it to be 10 and you want it to be 5, then I'm gonna look for that either way. So I just would say, if your concerns are what they are, just kind of have those addressed privately and maybe revisit this. That's what I would say. That's my kind of 2 cents on it. I mean, I know what yours are there. So I mean, everybody knows what Nick's issues are, unfortunately. But because it's been
delivered.
Yeah,
It's-
there's
it's a delivery.
some truth to the state. No, we're not reimbursing. I 100% agree with that. But I just have a different thought process, but that's okay.
Well,
I think what I think what Dan just said is helpful. I think you guys should chat with Jen. Because as a board collectively, we are trying to all learn from each other and figure this out and navigate it. So I think that would be helpful.
Do you think the state looks at our high number of school choice kids and views that as a reason why they're not giving us as much as other districts?
no.
No, they can't do anything around that formula that has anything to do with school choice students.
Yeah, there's been no change.
There's nothing that they can do in that formula at all.
I
But it
believe
is important for us to know that every time our enrollment declines, we also get less money in chapter 7. So,
And I believe it was 98 that school choice was instituted, and that amount hasn't been changed yet. And again, to Nick's point, there was a bill that's failed. I know there's a lot of discussion at the state level on chapter 70, but that's not choice-based funding, unfortunately. And as I respect Nick's point, that's a tall order to get the state to really look at this. And I don't want to see kids looking for opportunities have to wait for the state of Massachusetts to make things right. So again, that's kind of my 2 cents to the other members, is maybe just have a one-on-one discussion and whatever your concerns might be, just trying to have it addressed. So I mean, I'm a big proponent of this. I have been for my time on the committee. So whatever is going to be presented to me, and as much as I didn't like limiting it last year, it's never a money issue for me. It's never a reimbursement issue for me. It's an opportunity for these kiddos that are looking for something better. That's how I've always looked at it. So.
Fair enough. All right, so I guess we will I'll entertain a motion to table. With the direction from admin to,
What can we do?
No, you wouldn't be tabling because the vote was in the negative. So this is now a closed item on the agenda. If the committee has a one-on-one discussion with Dr. O'Neill and it's a members thing, we already voted. It's,
give it, hold on, because I don't understand we voted no to the. As presented, the problem is you said we need to have a public hearing.
that's,
So what we'll do is we'll schedule a public hearing and we'll go from there, because ultimately we need to have a decision by May 1st.
But
I guess-
is there, can we still bring this back up on
Yes.
April 16th? Like if these guys come to you and say, this
Yeah.
is what I was thinking.
I just need to know what additional information is needed.
Yeah.
Yep,
so for Audrey and Justine, if it, and I'm just my 2 cents. If yours is the issue of you only want to do 20 spots and then it's just gonna be put on a further agenda. But if it's no against school choice adding any spots, then it's a different policy and procedure of public hearing, because we would no longer be a school choice. And we would have to potentially check with legal and the school choice policy if we can even allow staff or siblings in at that point. I'm not positive, I'm not sure how that reads.
so we need to vote by April 30th, that's the last date that we can vote, because we have to let the state know by May 1st.
I understand
Yeah.
that, but my question for clarity is, if we say no new school choice spots and we essentially then become not a school choice district, how does that impact potentially any staff or siblings?
Siblings are allowed under the regulation as long as their siblings are here, staff will not. So we could not enroll any staff children as school choice unless they already have a sibling that are here.
How many staff kids do we have here right now?
Oh gosh, off the top of my
You can
head,
get it back to us if you.
yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
So then would it, I guess from what you need from us, in what direction would be,
And we don't have to do this now, we can talk offline, I'll put it back to you. It's up to you.
okay, yeah, I mean, I think. Yeah, I think everyone kind of knows what I want, but, okay. And then. As a perk of a contract from other districts, how do can we look at the, I guess that would be my big thing, is like, what are the legal ramifications, if you will? By doing this, what does the public hearing mean? What does it mean for our staff? How do other districts get around that as a perk in a contract? How does that all kind of factor into work?
So it would be you could put it in the contract, but you would not be collecting any tuition for these students. It would be, you would not be bringing in any income. So it would just be simply that we allow staff to register their children in their community as a perk of working as a Norton educator.
And this, I should know, do we have, is that open for all Norton employees?
Choice,
Yes.
I mean, it's open for anyone. So it would be like if you're a Norton firefighter, like anyone could do that. That would not be something we would put in our contract with teachers and parents.
All right, I guess we can move on then. Any other, good, it's on the same page here, perfect. Any other business not anticipated in 48 hours? No.
Nope.
All good, motion to adjourn,
So moved.
all those in favor?
Done.
I'm just tired. Thank you.
I got it.